Hey, Grandpa, it's another time for us to do a vlog. What do you think? Who should we talk about this time? Daniel? No, that would take at least over an hour if I talked about Daniel. Hmm? What's that you say? I should talk about Alexander? The Baron and antagonist of amnesia. So I figure I could talk about Alexander in depth for a little bit because the other two options I have for vlogs right now are a little bit more involved and complicated, and I figure let's keep it simple for right now. To be honest, I've seen Alexander in various lights. I at first kind of saw him the way Daniel saw him for the longest time, which was that he was, not that he was totally heartless and this awful guy, but, well, sort of, yeah, but that even though I saw his motivation. I was just like, okay, I get it. I know why you're doing this. You want to get home really badly. You want to get home to your love, and obviously that's more important than anything right now, and you're willing to do whatever it takes to do that. But I can't sympathize with that at all. I mean, the ends don't justify the means for that, even if it is for a good cause. So for the longest time, I sort of viewed him like that. But I've kind of gotten to the point where there's a reason why he's been given this such fond motivation and such intense love for this person he cares about that's back in his home world. And you don't, even in protagonists or villains alike, you don't see this kind of utter devotion that he has towards his lover that I think is often overlooked, pretty often actually. When you think about it, here he is. He's been banished to Earth for who knows how many centuries, at least 3 centuries, possibly 4 or 5. We don't even know the full extent of how long he's been here. But what we do know is that he has a love back on his home world that he's trying to get back to, and that's why he's looking for the orbs, and that's why he uses people like Wilhelm, Agrippa, Weyer, Daniel, using all of these people just to get back to them. And even though he might come to respect some of these humans and whatnot, he's not going to give up. He's going to get home or die trying, basically. That's the end of it. And a lot of people see him the fact that he's tortured and killed so many men, women, and children for this goal. And that's understandably so, the fact that he has gone to such horrible measures just to get back home. And for the longest time, I was in that boat as well. I was just like, I can't sympathize with you, dude, with this, because, yeah, I understand, you want to get back home, and that's fine, you know? But doing all this for that doesn't justify it. And yes, that's also true, but the fact is, I kind of didn't get as much into his head as I should have. Basically, Alexander's a very tragic character, because if the circumstances were different, just as like the Dark Sense main idea is that these characters are all victims of circumstance, and Alexander is the prime example of that. If there were different circumstances, Alexander would be an amazing protagonist. He's intelligent, he is devious, and yet he's utterly devoted and willing to do whatever it takes to be with somebody that he loves, which is very sweet. And a lot of people get this idea that, you know, the fact that he manipulated these humans means that is his nature by default, which could be something he developed after he got to Earth because he had to learn to, you know, convince people to help him with these very questionable acts. But I think that that's not his defining characteristic. His defining characteristics are being devoted and being caring and intelligent and being more than what he initially appears to be in the game, because that's basically, these circumstances don't define him, and that's why I don't see manipulative as his main trait or anything like that. It's something he probably learned when he got there, and even if he had it with him beforehand, I still don't see as a main part of him. But yes, he's persuasive. Yes, he's manipulative. He's just what kind of tilted the scales for me in seeing him more as an anti-hero instead of a pure villain is not only his motivation, which is his love, but his outlook and his view on humans and what he's doing. Because let's face it, Alexander's not a human. He's not of this world. We can see in some of the various memory capsules that he's like, humans are not even like a breath on from where I'm come from, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. But basically, humans are not, they're not his equal in his mind, which is basically why it's so amazing that he says to Agrippa in reference in one of the memory capsule texts, humans are not even a breath where I come from, yet I bow to you. Basically, that Agrippa was impressive enough to get Alexander's respect in that vein. I don't know if Alexander sees them as actually insects. I don't think he sees them that much, but maybe he sees them on the level of like us to animals. To his view, basically in Alexander's eyes, we are cattle being lined up for the slaughter, and he's in a slaughterhouse, and this is the only way he can make ends meet before he can get out of there and then and stop doing what he's doing. He's understood that he's become a monster. He's like, I'm a demonic sultan perched on a mountaintop, or something like that to them. I'm a monster to them. I realize what I've become. I'm not blind to it. He's absolutely committed to this. He has nothing else to live for, and this is what he has to do. With that viewpoint, with the idea that he doesn't see humans as his equals, it's sort of easier to understand how he could do all that. Obviously understand that he knows he's a monster still. Once you realize how lonely he's become over centuries and everything like that, you can see how sad and hopeless he's become. He's starting to ask questions like, is it you I miss the most, my love, or is it myself? Basically, since he's changed probably so much since he got to Earth, that he's like, I've done so many things that I don't even know who I am anymore. At first I missed you the most, and I still miss you terribly, but I'm starting to see the changes in myself, and I'm wondering, am I even the same person anymore? Will I be the same? Will you recognize me when I come back home? And that's heart-wrenching. That after all this time, this devotion, that he still misses them, but he's changed, and his love might not recognize him, or might find him to be totally different when he gets back. It's sad. It's really sad. Time's passing him by, and he's desperate to get all the orbs together in order to get the ritual done. But first time he was too overconfident and hasty, and he messed it up, and the orb shattered. But it interests me the fact that he was unable to mend the orb, which suggests the fact that Daniel, probably with the Shadow's help, had been given some special insight to put the orbs back together. Because, I mean, if Alexander can't do it, and he's incredibly intelligent in regards to this world and his, and he can't put it back together, that's saying something. Basically, there's more to Alexander than meets the eye. The fact that he's not so wicked as initially seen. Another thing I don't like seeing is not just the idea that he's a heartless bastard or whatever, but I also don't like the idea that he's so lonely that he would just cling and attach himself to any guest he has in the castle. Let's be honest here. He might have befriended Agrippa and Weyer, possibly. We don't know the extent of the relationship that Alexander and Weyer had before Weyer transfers the portal. And even with Daniel, even if Alexander did see him as a legitimate friend, seeing him on the level as he did with Agrippa, that is, not seeing him as a peon, but like an equal, even then, he still was willing to sacrifice Daniel to the Shadow. I mean, he wanted to help Daniel. It seemed like he wanted to. But he's talking to his love in one of the memory capsules, like, how can I trust him with the truth? Which is basically suggesting that he knew that it was impossible to save Daniel, or that only one person could go through the portal. And he's just like, well, if it's between me and Daniel, it's going to be myself. I've waited this long. I can't save him, but I can't say it either because he's relying on me to save him. Alexander is obviously not easily attached to anybody. But he cares a little bit about a few humans, which would be Agrippa and Daniel. He's sad that he has to leave them behind in the dust. And there's it's said in the notes about Weyer's tonic that he was about to help Agrippa get out of his husk and send him to Weyer, because he needed Weyer's help that badly. And I think that was probably written soon, I think. Or probably right before Daniel came, because once Daniel arrived, Alexander was probably like, you know what, I have the extra help I need to do this ritual myself without Weyer's help. And that's why he didn't actually go through with it, and Agrippa is still in the husk when you meet him. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that, Alexander's been on this planet for so many years, but in the end, Wilhelm became one of his servants, Agrippa was trapped in a husk, and Daniel was sacrificed to the shadow, but Alexander all had a purpose for doing these things. He was so devoted and so committed to this that he's like, nothing's going to stand in my way. Wilhelm, you and your men are getting in the way, and you're drawing attention to my castle, and I can't have that happen with my experiments. So you're gonna be one of my servants now. You're gonna be one of my mindless servants, and that's the end of it. Agrippa, I trusted you. I should have gone through that gate that Weyer went through. Why didn't you help me? I trusted you so much, and you're gonna die a mortal life if this, So I'm gonna save you. I'm gonna put you in this husk to keep your soul sustained, and keep you as leverage for Weyer, because that was unfair. That was an unfair thing to do, so it was a trade-off. He went through the portal, and I sustained your life in the meantime. And for Daniel, he's just like, Daniel, I want to help you. I need your orb in order to complete this ritual. I feel bad for you that the shadow's chasing you, but I'm going to need your help to extract Vitae because I'm running out of it. Time is running short. I need to be sustained for this long before the ritual is ready. You can't bring the shadow with you over into the inner sanctum and destroy us all. One of us has to live through this. I'm determined it to be me. Basically, I can see that being Alexander's position through most of his life, which now I can understand better, and I feel bad for him. I don't feel as bad for him as I do for, like, Agrippa, Daniel, Weyer, and etc., but I do feel bad for him. He's gone to extreme measures, and he's changed so much after going through Brennenburg, and he's made friends that he's had to sacrifice. And while he's not really like that touchy-feely kind of guy, being like, oh damn it, I have to let you guys go and I have to sacrifice you. You can still tell that he did care at least somewhat for some of these humans. There's a reason he says, Daniel, your sacrifice will be remembered forever. He's thinking, well, thank you for sacrificing yourself for my sake, Daniel. For the sake that I can return home to my love, who I've missed for centuries, who I've sacrificed so much for, who my personality has changed for while on this earth, who I've tortured and sacrificed so many humans for, and animals, everything. It says a lot about his character. Basically, I've kind of felt less angry about Alexander the more I've known about him. I just don't like his depiction a lot in the fandom as either being a heartless bastard or being a super clingy manipulator. He's not that. He's sort of reserved and kept to himself, but he's not totally opposed to developing friendships with humans, because obviously a few of them have impressed him, like Agrippa. He's that stoic kind of personality that's learned to be manipulative for his own ends, and he certainly, you can tell how much he is, how he talks to Daniel, like, you started all this, if you had just surrendered to the Orb Shadow, none of this would have happened. Which is kind of a cruel thing to do to Daniel when he's just starting to learn everything that he's done, is suffering through it. And here is Alexander, trying to convince him to just give himself over, which obviously doesn't work. But you can tell that even though he cares a lot about these humans, that Alexander still has his focus on the main prize, and you gotta give him props for that. I mean, even the fact that he is still the antagonist of the story, and that he has his motivations for doing what he's doing, and that he sees humans as lesser than himself. In the end, he's still, I'm gonna do this. I'm getting home or dying trying, and I will do whatever it takes, even if it means breaking your spirit and your body to get back home. I will do that. Which is kind of sad at the same time, because you're thinking, if he does care about these characters like Agrippa, Daniel, maybe even Weyer, we don't know, you would think that would bother him even just a little bit, considering that he knows what a monster he's become, or something like that. Maybe it's not totally tearing him up inside, but he's feeling a little bit of, you can kind of get the hint that maybe he's feeling a little bit of remorse that he has to do this, but in the end his resolve is firm. and very, very strong. Iron will, and he's willing to sacrifice what he's gained in this earth to get back to his home world. Gotta give him props for that. Alexander's a very complicated character. I think he deserves a little bit more attention. He seems to get like the least amount of attention in the fandom, which is interesting because he's the main antagonist of the Dark Descent. He needs more love. He's an interesting character. I only wish we kind of knew what his love was like their name and anything like that. What they look like. It would have been kind of nice to get a general idea, but I suppose it wasn't important for the story. The idea was just Alexander's love there driving his motivation. I do find Alexander to be very interesting, and hell, that voice is awesome, right? You gotta respect a character that is willing to go through everything that he did. That is willing to sacrifice his humanity, his personality, his time, his patience, his resources, and friends he might gain along the way just to get back to someone he loves. Alright, that's all I have to say for Alexander for now, guys. Say bye. Bye, Agrippa. Bye. Bye, Alexander.